Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and I really appreciate Miles for Migraine giving me and Dr. Friedman this platform just to speak specifically to vestibular migraine patients. I think a lot of us often feel forgotten in the whole mix, and so it's great that we're finally getting some attention brought to this. So, really appreciate that. I'll go ahead and get started with my story. Let me share my screen if I can. Okay. Do you guys, let me see. Oh, the wrong thing. Do you guys have my PowerPoint, or is there a way to, I don't see an opportunity to share it here.
Down along the bottom, do you see along the bottom? Do you have a green button?
Oh, here it is. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. All right.
There you go, perfect.
Perfect. So this is kind of my intro that I'm going to start with, my weird vestibular symptoms. And if you're on this call, I'm sure you also experienced some of these. When I was first diagnosed, this was a little over 5 years ago, and I started having these strange sensations of just mild dizziness, like I was walking on marshmallows or the ground was moving up and down under me. And it started off very, very mild, and then just eventually got worse and worse and worse and more dramatic, including symptoms like vertigo, both spinning. I felt like either I was spinning or the room around me was spinning, or I would sometimes feel like my car was moving forward when it was in park. That eventually led into feelings of disassociation where I felt like a little bit detached from my body, or like my head was about to pop off and float away. I also had symptoms of light sensitivity, sound sensitivity. So it was really difficult for me to go out in public, grocery shop, go to restaurants without just feeling like I could hear everything so much more than the average person. It just kind of hurt my ears or hurt my eyes. I wanted to wear sunglasses all the time. And I'm sure a lot of us can relate to this. I saw 7 different doctors before I was finally diagnosed with vestibular migraine. And they were considered actually some of the best doctors in Dallas. So I went from ENTs to neurologists to vestibular therapists, and not one of them brought up vestibular migraine. I was diagnosed with everything from anxiety, because I mean, who wouldn't feel anxious feeling symptoms like this? I was a normal, newly married 30-year-old who loved to travel, and all of a sudden I felt like I wasn't myself anymore. I could hardly work in my career, which was at the time I was designing watches at Fossil, and I couldn't stand any time on the computer without having like awful, awful symptoms with my eyes and vertigo attacks. And if I got stressed at all, it would just come all down on me, and I would be out for days and days. So I saw so many doctors. I did vestibular therapy almost every day for about a month, and I only got worse. The only time I felt better was on prednisone, which now makes sense. But at the time, no one could really understand it. I was told I had vestibular weakness by one doctor, and another doctor said, I had a perilimb fistula and I couldn't fly anymore and I would have to get surgery. So I was getting all these different diagnoses from different places. And I finally got fed up and just reached out to friends on Facebook. And I was like, look, my life is miserable. What do I do? I eventually got referred to the Mayo Clinic in Arizona. and drove all the way out there 16 hours with my husband, which was miserable with a vestibular disorder. But I was told I couldn't fly with my potential parallel fistula diagnosis. And during that time, I remember the physician looking at me and he said, "You have migraine." And this was after 2 days of testing, doing all the VNG, ENG tests, and everything that goes into vestibular testing. And I was like, "No, I don't. I never get head pain." And I always thought that if you had to have a migraine, you had to have a headache. And what I realize now, that's not true at all. And I think it's a common misconception with vestibular migraine as well, even with doctors. And he said, "Look, I can't treat you. You need to find a neurologist who's specialized in this, but this is what you have." And by some miraculous moment, I got a call that week from uh, UT Southwestern, and I had been on Dr. Bay's wait list for months and months, and he had a cancellation and got me in. And he was this dizzy doctor who specialized in unexplained dizziness, and he also agreed with my diagnosis of vestibular migraine. But in this time of months that I was trying to be diagnosed, I lost my job. And I think a lot of us are familiar with that. It's really hard to get approved for FMLA, short term disability, when you don't have a diagnosis or you have three different doctors who don't agree on your diagnosis. And it was really hard on me. And my employer didn't make it easy on me either. I mean, I was really stuck at home suffering all the time, and without a diagnosis, it was tough to get any approvals from my insurance or any kind of financial support as well. So I just understand that from a patient perspective, and my heart goes out to people who are still struggling to be diagnosed. And little did I know that we had such a resource in UT Southwestern in my backyard. Otherwise, I wouldn't have driven 16 hours to go to the Mayo Clinic. But it all ended up working out. And the minute I got on a treatment plan, my symptoms started to improve. My life with vestibular migraine is a different life compared to what it used to be. Even now, I have to be careful about going to grocery stores or restaurants, or even long conversations where I'm standing outside and I'm standing for a long time. They can be kind of triggering for me, which seems like an odd trigger to have, but I know so many of us can relate to that. Driving, walking, and working out became major goals for me because, you know, uh, uh, before, when I was having dizziness every day and this difficulty of walking on the ground without feeling like it was moving on me, it is very hard to center yourself. And so sometimes just walking down a sidewalk was a huge, huge goal. And I worked with some of the therapists at UT Southwestern who helped me create different situations to put myself in and different ways to look to help um, get my vestibular system working again the way it should. I have to constantly watch my trigger load. Now that I've been on my treatment plan for about 5 years and it's changed throughout that time, I stayed in close touch with my neurologist as I went through the IVF process through my pregnancy, and now post, we've been in constant touch, and we're always changing my treatment plan. So it's something you have to constantly watch, which does seem like a burden, but it becomes second nature versus how you originally start when you're first diagnosed. So it gets a lot easier, even though you still have to watch it all the time. What works for me one year may not work the next, and that's what I've kind of realized through pregnancy is you just really have to be open to trialing new treatments, new medications, new even supplements, working closely again with your neurologist to see, is there anything else that I could add in? And what's been kind of interesting through me is I've been following and reading a lot of the studies that Dr. Friedman, who you'll learn from later today, that her and Dr. Bay have done together, like using the non-invasive vagus nerve stimulation for vestibular migraine. And so that's something that I've been able to incorporate into my treatment plan post pregnancy, which helps during breastfeeding. So there's options if you can't always look into some of the new medications. Um, and there, finding a neurologist who again will work with you on what stage you are in your life is such an amazing blessing, and it's something that we have more access to now, especially with teleconference. So that makes it a lot easier. I will never be the same person that I was before vestibular migraine, and I think we can all relate to that. It living with chronic migraine changes you. You look at the world differently. I will never look at grocery shopping the same again. I have to go more prepared with my blue light blocking glasses, and either of my headphones if I feel particularly symptomatic that day. Or sometimes that means ordering groceries online. Sometimes if I know I'm going to be in a long conversation, I have to sit down and just let the other people know, look, my vestibular symptoms are flaring. This is what I need to do to help protect myself. Even restaurants, there are some restaurants that I prefer, or ways I like to sit to avoid flickering candles or doors opening and closing that let the light in, things that can be particularly triggering to someone with a vestibular disorder. Again, there's not enough awareness for vestibular migraine. Since I was diagnosed about 5 or 6 years ago, I have seen so much awareness increase, and it's been really amazing to watch. I know there was just a handful of us that were Vita ambassadors at the time, and now I feel like I see a new Instagram account pop up every day with some patient's experience about vestibular migraine, and that's amazing to get so much awareness around it and more attention to it. Just like Miles for Migraine is bringing attention to it now. But again, sharing your stories, being vocal, never giving up on searching for a good neurologist or a neurotologist or ENT, whoever you're working with. Many different people treat vestibular migraine. So just searching for that doctor that really understands you and can work with you on a treatment plan can really help. And that's what I'm saying. It does get better. Advocate for yourself, for physicians and treatments. The first time I went in to see Dr. Bay, we were talking about all my medication options. And I said, look, I'm 30 years old. I really want to start a family soon. This was our plan before this hit me. What can we do what treatments can I be on where I can either easily wean off or get pregnant later? So don't just assume that you're going to have to be on all this medication. Again, there are different ways and different paths you can take for treatment. And hopefully you'll learn about some of that later today. You may need a travel or teleconference to find a doctor who understands this type of migraine. And that's one of the things that has been such a positive thing to come out of this pandemic is a lot of the doctors that I know and that have been so integral to getting more information about vestibular migraine out there are now offering teleconference appointments. So just checking even UT Southwestern is. So that's a great opportunity to get in with some of these doctors who you may not have previously had access to. Be willing to try new things. So I'm currently trialing the Gamma Core right now, and I have been for the past 3 months. It's something that has really actually helped on days that I've had more head pain. So previously, I did not experience head pain until I had my baby. And ever since then, I think it might be hormones or something that's kind of kicked it up, or lack of sleep, probably. So I've been trying gammaCore for both my vestibular symptoms and now this head pain. And it's been really, really helping me through some hard days as an acute treatment. And I'm trying to use it preventatively as well. It's definitely an interesting feeling. So if you have the opportunity to kind of trial it in your neurologist's office, I would highly recommend that first. But it's something that you kind of get used to over time. And so that was a new treatment that I kind of put myself out there to try. And it's been really beneficial for me, especially actually after getting the COVID vaccine. It helped me with some of those symptoms that spiked a little bit directly after. Finding a community of the right kind of support. So I think there's a lot of vestibular communities out there that can actually breed a little more negativity, and you start reading how people, don't recover for years and years and years, and it starts to give you anxiety, and then you're like, is that going to be me? I mean, that was me. I was just trying to find any information I could, and so I was joining all of these groups, and some of them weren't the right kind of support for me. So a good kind of support are places like Miles for Migraine, which offer patient support groups, and it's also backed by, physicians and met good medical information, not just, you know, things that are working for patients, which can also be helpful too. But you want to have a good supportive group that's also backed by a little bit of science and mix in the things that work for you as well. So finding a group of the right kind of support where you can talk with other patients, but also feel very positive about your future is really, really important. And, that can also come from your doctor as well. I remember feeling super discouraged. I was doing all my treatment plans. Had altered my diet. I was doing my vestibular therapy. I was doing my supplements. I was doing my medications. And I still was only seeing very, very minimal, slow progress. And I remember sitting down with Dr. Bay one day and I just said, look, is this ever going to get better for me? Am I ever going to feel normal? And he just said, yes, like I promise you, the majority of my patients, they get to a place where they're either not seeing me anymore or they're only coming in for maintenance every so often. And you will get to the point where you can manage this well. We're going to find you the right treatments that work for you. And it did take about 2 years, but I have totally dizzy-free days now. There was a point in time where I felt like I was in remission since going through IVF and having a child. I definitely have more dizzy days now, but also I'm really straining my trigger load with lack of sleep and just trying to get through crazy hormones and everything like that. And even still, my attacks have never been as bad as they were when I was initially diagnosed and had no direction in my treatment plan. So just know that it gets better there. And even if you feel like you've tried everything, I promise there's something else out there that you just need to work on. And if it's not your doctor that understands that, or if they say we've tried everything, just go see a new doctor because you haven't tried everything and there's always a new combination to try. And then be an advocate for vestibular migraine, talk about it, raise awareness, educate. There are so many opportunities to volunteer, whether it's the Vestibular Disorder Association, Miles for Migraine, sharing your story, your patient advocacy story, even just talking about it more with friends and family. You don't have to create a blog or put all this effort into Facebook and Instagram. All you have to do is just share your story with friends and family and make sure they understand about this new type of migraine. And there's never been, anytime I share my story with someone, I swear there's always someone else who says, oh, I have an aunt or a cousin that experiences these weird dizziness or vertigo symptoms, and they've never known exactly what's going on. That happens to me all the time. And you would be amazed how you can connect with other people. Just no one was talking about it before. So the more you raise awareness, the more this illness will get awareness and the more it will be researched, which is really exciting. Some of my favorite resources, so vestibular.org is another nonprofit, the Vestibular Disorder Association, and they'll sometimes work with Miles for Migraine, and they have a lot of different resources for different types of vestibular disorders. So maybe you have a combination of vestibular migraine with triple PD, or you have Meniere's disease. A lot of these can kind of cross over sometimes. So that's a good quality resource for information and also getting you plugged into some support groups. Dr. Bay just came out with a new book called Victory Over Vestibular Migraine. It's pretty much everything I wish I would have known when I was originally diagnosed, from diet information to supplements to different types of medications, even neuroplasticity. He talks about, a lot of these, like the cephaly and the gamma core. So it's just packed with lots of good information. I think you can buy it off of Amazon. YouTube videos. So I've done some with Dr. Bay. The Migraine World Summit has covered vestibular migraine a few times. And Dr. Tuxedo, he does some information on YouTube as well. Dr. Hain is a good resource called dizzydoc.com. He treats in Chicago and he has a lot of information that he puts out there from his own clinic. So just kind of gathering those together can kind of give you a good idea of what different doctors are doing in different parts of the country. Miles for Migraine meetups and support groups. We're doing an online cooking class next week. I'll give you tips and tricks of how I like to cook with a vestibular disorder, how I like to hold my knives when I'm dizzy, how I use cooking kind of as vestibular therapy. It's not so much of a, when you look at it that way, it's not so much of a burden. It can be kind of fun and give you some goals to do. So I encourage you to join us. It's a free class. My website is thedizzycook.com. And then you can also get my cookbook on Amazon, the Dizzy Cook Shop, and Barnes and Noble. Most bookstores. It can be found all over the world, and it's just got recipes if you want to try a migraine elimination diet. That's kind of what I was struggling with, getting good recipes and finding things that were fun to eat. Even if you don't follow a strict migraine diet, it's recipes their whole family will love, and it just teaches you kind of how to read labels and look for additive free ingredients and make cooking at home a little more fun. So even if you're not looking for a strict elimination diet, then you would still enjoy the recipes. And I just kind of share a little bit about my story to getting diagnosed, as well as some of the natural treatments that have worked for me, like magnesium. So I would highly recommend that. And then you can always connect with me on any of these platforms: Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest. I save recipes, lots of easy recipes there, and Twitter. So I'm at the Dizzy Cook. And if there's any more questions, I would love to answer them, but that's kind of my journey.
Great. Thank you. And I'm going to apologize for my voice. The my allergies are so bad here on the East Coast. So I apologize. We have a quick poll that we are going to ask if you fill out. Helen's going to drop it in right now. And if you don't mind filling that out, I will give everybody the answer to it. Just takes about a minute. Alicia, thank you so much. That was a great
presentation.
Sure. And we have a few questions.
Okay.
Actually, I'll ask while people are filling that out. So you were talking about your cookbook, and actually I'll ask one of the questions. Someone asked, are seeds okay? Are seeds okay to eat? They have on their Washington University list of foods that they can't eat, or on their avoid list, it says pumpkin, sunflower seeds, and things that they should avoid.
Yeah, so seeds can actually be a little bit higher in tyramine, which is kind of one of the amino acids we tend to avoid if, in aged meats and cheeses. But on the Johns Hopkins migraine diet, which is kind of what my book is based around, they allow seeds. It's just nuts that need to be eliminated. So it's just really something you're going to have to try. I would recommend keeping them in your diet. I think if you're going on an elimination diet, just keep as much as you can in your diet. And then if you notice things bothering you, you can eliminate them later. I do have some readers that end up having to eliminate seeds eventually, but it's just something that kind of is trial and error. So if that's something your doctor is recommending and they want you to do, then definitely follow their recommendation. But if you're just kind of trying to follow a migraine diet in general, I would keep them in initially and just see if they bother you later on.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you recommend like not a peanut butter, but what?
Sunflower seed butter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember
And
that from your cookbook. So, okay,
and
wonderful.
pumpkin seed butter. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Thank you so
Pumpkin
much
seed
for
butter is
your,
awesome.
right. And so we just got a response. The question was yes, right? Most people have vestibular migraine on here today, right, Helen? That popped.
Yeah, it looks like 32 of the 46 participants. So that's great. Great reach.
Yeah, yeah. So thanks everybody for joining us. I'm excited that this is such a great presentation for all of you. That popped away while I was talking with Alicia. Okay, so I have another question here. So did your symptoms of your vestibular migraine change during your pregnancy?
Yes, they did. So basically, let me see. So basically, I initially I was going through IVF, which I think was part of my issues as well. So I was doing a lot of hormone injections. At the time, my first trimester was really, really difficult. I was having more head pain. Like I said, I'd never really experienced head pain with my attacks before. And so that was something that was kind of new for me. I was on a lot of estrogen and progesterone. So I'm not sure if that affects how my vestibular migraine was during pregnancy. It's kind of interesting to see. I think if I wouldn't have been on so many hormones, maybe things would have been a little bit easier for me. But about my second trimester, all of that went away and I felt great up until my labor. I had a really traumatic labor experience, and right now they require you to wear masks. And so I ended up they were wheeling me into, I had an emergency C-section. They were wheeling me into the OR, and the movement with the anxiety and everything like that triggered a vertigo attack. And so I was basically vomiting in my mask. And I was trying to explain to the people, like, look, I have this vestibular disorder. Like, I can't. So the minute I got in there, my anesthesiologist worked together to calm that down for me. And I was pretty knocked out, which is, not how you want your first birth experience to go. But your baby was here healthy and happy, and they worked on a treatment to get me comfortable as fast as they could. So again, being vocal as much as you can during those kinds of experience can really, really help, because they can help you, and they're familiar with vestibular disorders. You just kind of have to communicate that. The mask thing was just unfortunate. But overall, it's kind of changed. My first trimester was rough. Then it got a little bit better. Labor was rough. Then it got a little bit better. Losing sleep was rough. It's a trigger for me. But as we're sleeping more, it's getting a little bit better. So just kind of staying in touch with Dr. Bay and working on that treatment plan has helped me a lot. And I just highly recommend to communicate between your OB, your pediatrician, and your neurologist, because they'll all three tell you different things when it comes to different meds and stuff like that. So with breastfeeding, we usually defer to the pediatrician. I'll get opinions from everyone and then defer to the pediatrician. As I was pregnant, I kind of deferred to my OB, and then Dr. Bay will just kind of give his opinion here and there on what he thinks is best. So if you can get them to communicate with each other, that's like gravy. That's awesome. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Do you,
Uh-huh.
what supplements have you found to be the most helpful?
Magnesium has been incredibly helpful for me, and also mixing different types of magnesium. So with my brain fog and memory loss issues, I really have enjoyed taking magnesium threonate. There's a particular brand I like called Cognimag out there. It's currently out of stock, but really you can find any type of magnesium threonate, and I take it actually in the mornings, since I can't tolerate caffeine very well, and it kind of wakes me up and gives me some mental clarity. So that's been something that's been really helpful for me in my treatment plan. I usually take magnesium glycinate towards the evenings and throughout the day. And then if you're pregnant, um, TMI, but you deal with a lot of constipation. So that's where something like magnesium citrate can be helpful. And so I kind of mix that into my treatment plan as well. So um, that's magnesium has been the supplement that has helped me probably the most. Again, vitamin D, I take CoQ10. Actually, ubiquinol is a great supplement also for migraine, but it can also help with egg quality. So if there's anyone dealing with fertility issues, that was something that my reproductive endocrinologist put me on. So it's something to look into as well. And then B vitamins, if you need some extra energy, that also helps sometimes, but it can also be important for migraine too.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Someone asked, can you discuss the way stress can impact vestibular migraine?
Oh gosh. I think a lot of it actually is, I don't know if you guys notice this, but I hold in my breath when I'm stressed, like in traffic or whatever. Um, or if I get really frustrated with something I'm working on, I tend to feel it all in my shoulders and I hold my breath, and I just notice like I'm not taking these deep breaths. They're very, very shallow. So just kind of be cognizant of your breathing can help in an instant and bring that dizziness down. I'll notice it when I'm stressed out in traffic sometimes, and I'm like, oh gosh, I feel like my head is getting a little bit floaty. Just taking deep cleansing breaths. There's things, Miles for Migraine does a great series with yoga. And so you can do like alternate nostril breathing, even different techniques to kind of calm your body down. So you can get some of those tips from them. I think it's Thursday nights. And also, depending on how stressed you're getting, maybe factoring in some things like exercise really tends to help me de-stress, going for a walk, just incorporating little moments of joy into your life, whether it's cooking or anything like that, to try to get your mind off of what's bothering you. Even I feel like vestibular migraine causes stress in and of itself. So just trying to incorporate those moments that really relax you. One part of my treatment plan is getting massages bi-weekly if I can, and it helps kind of release the tension in my neck as well as my head. So she'll do some acupressure points kind of around my head and neck, and help release some of that tension and stress. And that's actually been more beneficial to me than acupuncture, but everyone's different. So just try and see what works for you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to ask you one last quick question because I think it will be a quick answer. Did you have any anti-anxiety benefits from the
Timol?
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't have any anti-anxiety benefits. If anything, what it did help me with was my attacks. So if you're getting fewer attacks, I feel like you're getting less anxiety. Because attacks are scary. It's scary to have vertigo and not, or feel like the ground is falling out from underneath you. I totally get it. And so I feel like the second you get control of your vestibular migraine attacks, you have more control over that anxiety. But I wouldn't say that the drops particularly helped me with anxiety. Um, for that, I was actually on a benzo, which I think Dr. Friedman can speak to later if she has that planned. And um, that was something that tends to help me with anxiety a little bit more when I need it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And we appreciate everything that you spoke about. And if there's any questions, if you can scan the chat, if maybe there's a question or two you can pop in and answer, any other questions that I didn't get to, that would be fabulous.
Sure.
Thank you so much. It's always wonderful to see you.